Welcome to Anything But Ordinary with your host, Spooky and Raven. Tonight's topic is Skinwalkers, Wendigos, and Shape-shifters. I knew I would mess that up. Hello and welcome. My name is Spooky, and I want to introduce you to our other host, Raven.
Hey, I'm sorry, I was laughing.
Hello, Raven. How are you tonight?
I don't think I know that subject of shifting shapes.
I knew I would mess that up. I just knew it.
Well, it's only our second show, so at least we started off better than the last time.
Yes, we did. Tonight's subject is about something that I'm not real sure if I believe in it. I read a lot about it. I've watched videos, but I kind of have a hard time with it.
Which part? Skinwalker, the Wendigo, shape-shifting,
well,
the
human being turning into an animal. That's what I have a problem with. I mean, this is all legend. I realize that. It's actually more prominent in the Native American culture than anywhere else, but it's kind of hard to find a Native American that's willing to talk about them.
It's a rarity, and I think the only time I've ever really heard about it was in passing. You know, because I live up in the northern Great State, where up in the woods near the border or whatever, and it's like I've heard a lot of Wendigo stories and told not to go out at night at certain times, and you know, or the Wendigo is going to get you, whatever. I heard a lot about that, but I haven't heard too much about Skinwalkers. But I got, you know, from what I heard, they don't really talk a whole lot about it because they don't want to bring that onto them.
Just so for the people who don't know, why don't you explain what a Skinwalker is?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Put it on me. Let's see how you win. A Skinwalker, also known as I hope I say this right, is a naaldloshii. It is a being that travels like on all four legs, and it's basically an individual who's into witchcraft, and I don't know.
This is Native American witchcraft.
Yeah.
They believe that the Native Americans believe that the natural and supernatural worlds connect, and they also and this is part of a human turning into in a Native American witch turning into an animal. Now, some of them, this is something that you don't just pick that you're going to be. This is something that I'm guessing from what I read that they are taught, kind of like a shaman, different thing, but they're taught through the years. Some of them will wear animal skins on themselves, and they believe that they take on the energy and the spirit of this animal, and they shape-shift into this animal.
Well, it's multiple. I believe it's Navajo, the Hopi, the
Ute.
Yeah, and they believe in the term for the skinwalker or whatever. But when I was hearing about this stuff and why I was interested in it, researched it off and on, you know, throughout my life or whatever, it's just because I find it fascinating when you hear people passing down these different stories, or you hear people in passing saying, hey, I had this really odd experience, and it's like where they saw like a half human, half animal. Like, well, there's people who talk about who they saw a deer woman, you know what I mean, where this beautiful woman was walking down, like this guy was walking in like this nature park, state park, whatever, down the paved path. It's in the wilderness or the woods, whatever, and he's walking and enjoying it, whatever, and he sees this woman coming up, you know, up the path, and she's dressed in deer skin or whatever, and she's really beautiful, whatever, but when she's walking by, it sounds like hoofs on the pavement, whatever, and when he looks down at her feet, he noticed that her legs are like deer legs, but the rest of her is human, and she's wearing like deer skin as clothing, whatever. And when he turns all the way around, trying to figure out, what's going on, is when he says she turned completely into a deer and then ran off into the woods. I mean, there's tons of people sharing their stories all over the internet, throughout different areas of...
That's really strange that you would mention a woman, because everything that I read, it was always a man. I had never seen one of the stories where it was a woman who was a shapeshifter.
Well, I guess who's I'm stuttering. I don't even know what my problem is. I've been sick for like 12 days, so I'm still kind of a little bit out of it or whatever. But, I mean, who's to say it's just males and can only do it, or just females? I guess it depends. Like, one, they say that skinwalkers become this way because they choose witchcraft and they choose to live a darker life, and they call on the spirits and possession and don these animals' skins, whatever, and it gives them the ability to morph into whichever skin they don on at the time, and they don't have to just turn into one, they can turn into multiple different ones, depending on why they need to, for whatever use they use. But usually they're doing it is because they want to harm somebody else, and steal from somebody else, or, all I ever heard was kind of sort of like negative or whatever, but then...
Kind of a revenge thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but then I also heard a story where they're taken as children, and they're brought up into like the woods or whatever, and they're chosen. These children, they're like sensitive, and they're chosen, at a young age, between like 3 to 9 or whatever. I'm just going off of what I've read. I don't know if anything's factual or whatever, but I found it interesting. But they're sensitive to evil and good, kind of like people who see spirits, this, that, whatever, or they're more in tune to gifted abilities. You know what I'm trying to say? And they take these kids and they do like a 3-day ceremony, and they have like this huge bonfire going, and the people who are already skinwalkers are chanting and dancing around these kids, whatever. And they have all these different animal skins laid out, and some human skins as well. And basically, they're on a fast for 3 days. They can't eat or drink water, and they're sitting in front of these mirrors, and these people are chanting around them and doing all these Native American ritual stuff or whatever. And by the 4th day, they're given all this different type of food is laid out, and they're supposed to pick, all these different animals they can eat from, or they can eat from human.
So are they initiating them into this? I don't want to call it a cult. It's witchcraft, basically. It's Native American witchcraft. So they're initiating these children into this?
Yeah, and they say that, well, when they're doing the chants and the songs are being made, there's some people that are getting slaughtered around them during the ritual or whatever, and they place all these different types of foods in front of the children, and then they tell these kids on the 4th day to go and choose something to eat. And depending on what you eat and what you choose is also going to depict if you're going to be a white skinwalker, or a dark skinwalker, being, good or evil, is what this person was saying. This person said that he went through this ritual as a child, because his dad took him from his mom, because, like a separation thing, so the dad took him with him and brought him to this area, and they made him become a skinwalker. And on the 4th day, I think he chose to eat a prairie dog or whatever, and I guess they had like up to 15 kids, and only like 4 of them made it out alive. This is what this person's saying, and I'm thinking this is horrific, just to be as a kid and being brought out into this and forced to to see all this and have all this going on, But he picked different pelts, and supposedly he changed into this bird and flew around, and he had the most euphoric feeling, and he thought it was amazing. And then when he came back, I was like on the 4th day. I can't remember what it was. Hold on. Lost my train of thought. Like I said, he had to choose between animal or human or what he was eating, and he chose to eat the animal. And then when he was sitting in front of the mirror, they gave everyone a mirror to look into to meditate while they were chanting around him. And his eyes changed to the clear color eyes. And I guess some people can have like red eyes and yellow eyes. It depends on what you chose to eat or whatever. But each eye color.
Do the eye colors have a significance?
Yeah, they do. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of, like, this is like the second time doing the show, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I would have did better before we got on, but, yeah, each eye color,
we always do.
Determines, I know, whatever, but each eye color determines the level of, you know, the level of the skinwalker or whatever, and also depicting if they're good or bad. But this is what this guy wrote, where he's saying, I'm going to share. You know, most people won't talk about skinwalkers or how they become skinwalkers or anything that has to deal with it because it's just such a sacred thing, just like the shamans are. You know what I mean? And it's kind of interesting because I also heard that little kids are taken when they're little too, and then they're brought and taught to be shamans their whole entire life. So it's almost like some are taken to be good, like shamans, and then you're reading on something about the skinwalkers, and they're taken off and taught the dark art. You know what I mean?
Well, until I really started reading about them and watching videos and documentaries, I thought a shaman and a skinwalker were the same thing. Because I do personally know a Native American shaman, and I know that from the day he was born, it was determined what he was going to be through life, and he was trained for that all his life. And I know that they're very, very spiritual people. But I always thought that they were the same as skinwalkers. But I'm finding out that a skinwalker is something completely different. Shamans can, supposedly, shape-shift. I have to be slow on that word or I'm just going to get it, to mess it up. But it's not like a skinwalker. They shape-shift to communicate with the spirit world. They have a spirit guide. And the spirit guide is always an animal.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever their spirit guide is, I'm told that is usually the shape that they take.
I remember now. Your eyes usually are turned white or clear if you eat like a normal animal. Unless you eat snake or coyote, then your eyes are not white or clear. But eating a human results in having red or yellow eyes. So you'll know.
So that would basically be the darker side is when they start taking human lives.
Yeah. Whatever they eat, animal or whatever these skinwalkers kill, if they're killing animals and or humans, they're taking on their life force and their soul for the power, and it's making them more powerful in their witchcraft, spiritual level, whatever you want to talk it. But when you run into a skinwalker and you see him with red and yellow eyes, you know that person ate and killed a human. And usually they say that also to become a skinwalker, you kill someone in your own family.
Oh, wow.
So you know, I'm just saying, it's disturbing, the story that they're passing down.
If you walk up to someone and you don't know this person, or maybe even if you do, can you tell if they are a skinwalker?
Well, skinwalkers always wear objects of animals. They always have some form. See, I think back in the day they would probably don more of the skin, but nowadays, not to kind of blend in more, I think that they probably wear smaller objects. You know, like on a necklace, their hands or teeth, or you know, just a little bit of fur tied into regular clothing. They're not going to walk around naked with a full.
Well, that would kind of make sense because if you stop and think about it, you know, way back when, Indian reservations or even Indian villages were way out in the middle of nowhere. Nowadays, they're pretty close. They're closer to other people. I mean, there are a lot of them out there that are still in the middle of nowhere, like down in Arizona and Utah, places like that. I mean, they're just out in the middle of nowhere. But it would make sense that they would switch to smaller objects as a token of what they are, instead of the obvious, you know, wearing a big animal skin. But unless you know the sign, then you probably would know if you were talking to while they're in human form, if you were talking to a skinwalker or not.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not a professional by any means when it comes to anything that delves with the supernatural. And Spooky, you got to turn your headset down because I can hear myself. But I can hear myself really clear, so that's probably
annoying. Yeah, they said so in chat too, so I've been turning it down.
But as far as, I don't really know 100%. Like I said, I've always kind of been interested in this because I've heard stories growing up about the Wendigo. And to me, the Wendigo, the Skinwalker, the Shapeshifter, the Aruguru, they all kind of have the same common core. You know what I mean? And I find it fascinating that shape-shifting's been way back around since the dawn, since before Jesus' time. You know, if you go throughout history and lore, it's gone way back. And to me, I find that fascinating. And it's not just here, it's throughout all different cultures. Like Africa has the were-tiger and the hyena, and Europe, you know, they have that werewolf and whatnot. But all in Asia, I mean Japan or one of those, I think they have the swan maiden.
I think just about every continent in the world has some sort of story about a shapeshifter.
Yeah. And that, to me, I find that fascinating. Why is there so many stories about this throughout history? Where did it start from? Where did it come from? Who, you know, is there any truths to this? And being that, you know, depending on a person's belief system, like I believe in a creator, right?
Right.
So I believe that we're spirits that came here to have a human experience. I don't believe that we're humans having a spiritual experience. You know, I believe that we came here and we're just having an experience and growing more spiritual to get closer and closer back to the creator, you know. But since everything is made up of energy, you know, it's possible to, if somebody is at a certain level of spiritual heightened abilities, this is just, I'm not saying factual, I'm just a thought, okay? They could manipulate their own forms and their environment around them. So maybe it is possible to be a skinwalker and morph into another animal. But they say that you never really know if there's a skinwalker or not. When you see a bunch of coyotes or whatever, you'll never know if that's truly a skinwalker or a regular coyote. But they say, I've heard a bunch of people sharing stories about skinwalkers or whatever, and they say the only way that you kind of can tell that it's a skinwalker is that they never have the natural movement of the animal that they are in that form of. So if they're running around like a deer or whatever, they don't have that same natural deer.
It's kind of a clumsy movement. It's not the natural flow of that animal in movement. It's more of a clumsier movement.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. So it's like, I guess if you're sitting there and you're watching an animal and you say, okay, it's not really, that doesn't seem natural. You know, it seems kind of odd. And you sit there and you ponder on yourself. But I guess that they say also the skinwalker's eyes, they don't glow in animal form. They glow in their human form. And I guess the only way that you're really going to know if this animal is a skinwalker is they say that you catch them and you get them in a cage and you wait for them to transform back into their human form, and then that's when you can kill them. And they say you can only kill them if you have a weapon. This is different versions, not what I believe. I have no idea. I'm just going with what I'm saying. But they say it's dipped in white ash. And then other people say that you need a shaman to take out the skinwalker. And they also say, you know, if you get, if you have a skinwalker problem, they usually go to a shaman to help them get rid of that issue. But sometimes the shaman is the skinwalker, and that's how they make their money, you know? I heard that because the skinwalker's kind of greedy. I'm not saying this is my belief. I have nothing against Native Americans or anything, or I'm not trying to put them down. I'm just saying what I've heard. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Everything that we're talking about are things that we read, things that we heard, you know, just things that we ran into.
And you just find this fascinating, you know, and, you know, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it.
You made a point a while ago about their eyes glowing only when they're in human form. Mm-hmm. I was watching this show, and it was about this couple that moved to a cabin or to a house in the woods. And at night, this creature would visit their house. Now, this was on a program that supposedly this was a true story, and if I remember, I think it might have been Paranormal Witness. I don't know. But these people, they would find these tracks on their roof, in their yard, and they would follow the tracks, and they followed them back to a cabin, and they found out who lived in the cabin. Well, the guy was a mechanic in town, and when they went in to see this guy, they knew there was something about him because when he looked at them, his eyes were yellow.
Oh, see? Yellow and red, that means that he supposedly ate human flesh to become a skinwalker. He dined on the human instead of the animal.
Well, this guy would visit them every single night. And finally one night he quit coming. He just quit coming. And they found out later that the man had died. So they decided to walk back to his cabin, and the door was open, and they walked in. They found all these chains on the wall and this cage and stuff in this man's cabin, and that's about all that there was in there. So it gave you the impression that this guy was a shapeshifter, werewolf, whatever, and he would chain himself.
Is whatever a creature? Because I have not heard that one yet.
I haven't heard it either, but I'll look it up first chance I get. But it gave you the impression that this guy was a werewolf, and he would chain himself to his walls to keep from going out and hurting people. But yeah, the thing that got me was that they went in, they ended up at this garage in town. The guy was a mechanic there, and they asked some questions, and this guy was pointed out to him, and he knew them. This guy knew them. You could tell by the way he acted that he knew them, that these were the people whose home he was going to at night. He couldn't get in. He would go around it, scratch on the outside walls and everything. But when they looked at him, his eyes were yellow, almost like he had yellow jaundice. And they said that there was just something evil in those eyes.
Yeah, like they could just feel it or whatever. Well, they say, if I say that right, so the Skinwalker, the naaldloshii or whatever, if I said that right, but they say that they have the ability to read human thoughts and to help, and they can use their victims' own fears and secrets against them, you know, to try to control the minds of their victims, to force them to comply to whatever the Skinwalker wants them to do. And it also says that the Skinwalker has the ability to, I guess, mimic any human and or animal sound it chooses. You know, like, let's say you have one at your place. You don't even, you know, someone's in your area who's one and is jealous and wants something that you have or whatever. They can come and lure you out by, you know, being like one of your kids. And you're thinking, what's my kid doing out by the barn? You go out there, you know, and, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's like a video I just watched today, as a matter of fact, where this guy was out. He was a rancher. He owned this ranch in, I think it was Utah. And he was out, and he kept hearing his wife calling him. And he thought that, well, she's trying to get him on the radio. So he went to his truck to get on the radio, and the radio was turned off. But he kept seeing these. He thought he had a bad coyote problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was stealing his sheep or whatever.
Yeah, he put his sheep in another section of the ranch, thinking because he had a coyote problem, thinking they were safe there. And come to find out, the coyote problem went from one section of the ranch over to the section where these sheep were. And he would find the footprints and everything around, and the growls that he was getting, that he was hearing, were seemed unnatural to him, and they started to like send a fear through him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started hearing his wife calling him by name, and it sounded just like his wife. So he thought that, you know, he was far enough away, he thought his wife was trying to get him on the two-way radio. And when he walked back to his truck, the radio was off. So
I also heard, well, I don't know, but I also heard just in passing as growing up or whatever, not from things I was reading about, like I said, I was interested in this because of the stories I heard growing up, but I also heard that the Skinwalker, they don't really bother the white people. It's usually their own.
Against their own, right.
Yes.
Right.
And I guess that, yeah, and for, I don't know, I guess there had to have been something that he had that they wanted.
What I think it was, they were after those sheep, okay? Mm-hmm. And they were trying to distract him because they didn't go after this man at all. He was a white man and Caucasian, whatever. I don't want to offend anyone. And they were calling his name. They were distracting him away from the sheep. Well, when he finally got up to the sheep, they were dead. Some of them were missing, some of them were dead, and they were just mutilated. And
well, that's what they say. They liked whatever animal or person that they killed, they're taking on their soul and their energy and becoming more powerful. Supposedly.
But you did make a good point, though. Usually they take revenge or do harm to their own people and don't go outside their tribe.
Yeah, I haven't...
I didn't find one story where anyone but Native Americans were harmed by these things.
Well, and also, I guess they can morph into a loved one, supposedly. I guess it's depending on how powerful this witch is, and/or Skinwalker, whatever you want to call them. From what I've read, I'm no expert, nor do I want a Skinwalker coming after me for talking about this.
Me either.
I just find this very fascinating, you know. But I guess they can take on any human form too, depending on their level of their craft.
But they can sound like anything they want. They can sound like another animal. They can sound like a human.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess, and I'm wondering if the animal that they transform into, I'm wondering if what animal that they choose has anything to do with the level of their power.
I think what I heard was they choose the different pelts depending on what they need to accomplish at that moment. So, you know, a bird to fly to get somewhere faster, you know, a wolf for, you know, because I guess it has more strength and agility, and a coyote has a little bit more stealth and sneaky or whatever. I can't remember exactly what I read, but I know that each animal has a different strength and ability, and they use each different pelt for whatever thing that they need to execute at the time, and they don't just stay in one form. If they're being hunted as the coyote, let's say, and they're being shot at, and then all of a sudden you think they disappeared, they didn't just go invisible. They may have transformed into a bird and flew away.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, that's what I read too. It's not that they just disappeared into thin air, because they don't do that. They just take on the form of another animal. It could be a bird and fly away. I'd like to be able to fly away. But and also on the same documentary, this guy suddenly had this thought that his wife was in danger, and he was trying to speed back to the house, and he hit a woman crossing the truck in front of him. He hit her. And when he got out of his truck and looked, she was gone. But one of his lambs was there. And when he looked
up in a pelt.
Yeah, wrapped up in a pelt. You saw the same one. And he looked up, and there was a coyote just a little ways up the road that just stopped, kind of looked at him, and then went ahead and crossed the road.
Well, I also heard that, you know, the Skinwalkers, they also have to play by the natural law. as well. And they come together at certain times, be a bad or good skinwalker, to raise more skinwalkers, but it only happens every rare occasion in which there's a change that they're being made by the planet due to the climate or interplanetary change. And also, just because the skinwalkers are more in tune with nature than most anybody else. Because I truly believe that Native Americans are really more in tune than any other ethnic or whatever you want to call it. I believe that they have a more stronger spiritual sense. That's my take on it.
I think they're closer to the spiritual world. I really do.
And to Earth and the energy, and they understand.
Well, and they're more. Most Native Americans who really practice the old ways are more in tune with the earth and with nature itself.
And they understand the crystals and the rocks and the energy and how to work with plants. But plants is not really spiritual. That's just a whole different topic on its own or whatever. But
that kind of falls into natural healing.
Yes, like holistic medicine and whatnot. But
Right.
I truly believe that the Native Americans and stuff really have a better connection when it comes to the spiritual plane and understanding. And it's like, I think, just spending time with somebody who's really into their culture. I don't even say that's the right word. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I apologize. But just spending time with them and listening to those who are really into, what's the right word? I can't even think. But you know what I mean? Just listening to them talk about it or whatever, it makes me more fascinating, wanting to research and get to know more out there and not just what's in my own backyard.
Well, they seem to be calmer, too, with whatever they face. A good example is, this shaman that I know, once in a while on an investigation, I run into a demon. So who do I go to take care of the demon? I go and speak with the shaman. And I've noticed one thing about him. When he's dealing with it, he is calm. I don't know if he is on the inside, but to look at him and to watch him, it's just calmness. And it makes you feel, I'll be sitting there in a panic, and he'll be calm. And his calmness makes you calm. So to me, he's more in tune with not only the natural world, but the spiritual world as well. No matter what it entails.
Well, that's because he's at a level of such a deep spiritual place where most haven't delved or walked that path that far yet, where he's giving off an amazing energy, and that might be what you're feeling, that just that part of the creator, and he's just in one with everything, and you know what I mean? He's not as chaotic as the rest of us, because we haven't gone that far down the road yet.
I don't think that we are as in tune with the world as we like to think we are, like they are. I just don't believe it. Because we are taught different than what they are. A shaman is taught practically since birth about all of this. So by the time he reaches the age to where he officially becomes the shaman, he's calm. He's in tune with everything because he's been taught. We, on the other hand, are taught that those are evil things and to stay away from them and not mess with them.
Not we as a whole, but depending on where you grew up, what religion it really depends on your family and your neighborhood, because you're a product of your environment. So you can't say all of us as a whole went like that.
Well, I wasn't referring to all of us as a whole, but you're right.
Yeah, but I was just kind of trying to understand what you're stating. I'm not attacking you or whatever, but depending, like, you have a different little belief system than I have a little bit of different belief system. And, but yeah, you're right. We don't have the understanding of what he has because we weren't exposed to that. But like I said, when we were talking about your different stories, like when you've talked about your friend several times throughout the years when we've talked, I said when we first were going to start the show, I said, oh, wouldn't that be great if we could have him come on and talk tonight? And that's when you said, there's no way he would talk about this. It's just
I've
mean,
asked him. I've asked him, or I brought up the subject with him, and he just told me. He says that is just. He says that's something that we don't talk about. So a lot of them will not talk about it. If you even mention Skinwalker to them, it sends fear through them. They don't talk. That is something that's like telling your kids about the boogeyman. You talk about it in whispers.
Well, yeah, you don't want to talk about evil because it's almost like they can hear you, and they tune into you. Evil, it becomes, you think negative, you speak negative, you're attracting that to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like, I think that's why they don't talk about it at all, because they don't want that on them. They'd rather just ignore it, and if it's, if it doesn't bother them, awesome, they're gonna do good. But they do so many blessings before, the police do blessing, the Navajo police do blessings over themselves before they go out and interact with everybody, because they never know what they're gonna run into, and it's just like, I just love how connected they are, and it's just like, that's why I thought it'd be fascinating if your friend came on, because I thought I would learn so much from him. But I understand it on the same token.
I've known him for years, and that's a subject that I can't get out of him. And like I said, it's mentioned in whispers. It's almost like if they mention it out loud, that the Skinwalker can hear them, and then they'll be next on his hit list.
Yeah, and it's like the fascinating thing is, it's like they won't talk about. I mean, when I was growing up and I heard a bunch of stuff as far as the Wendigo goes, that's a little bit different than the Skinwalker, and we'll talk about that pretty soon. But as far as, and even then, they didn't go in great detail because they don't want to call that spirit onto them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the only time I really heard in-depth stories is when I did a little researching, because I was interested in this. And I thought that there was a lot of people sharing their stories on the internet where they could do it anonymously, where it was safe for them. But there are so many people who have had so many different experiences, from seeing deer people. From one guy said one had taken the shape of a moose and then turned human, to being a coyote, to whatever. But there's so many stories, and a lot of them happen when people are going through the reservation or near the reservation, but not so much off the reservation. But it's more down in Utah and what's the other couple states down there?
Arizona,
New Mexico.
and
where they have that huge Navajo reservation, and it's a really good area. You know what I mean? That's where people tend to have more stories, where I've read about, coming from. And they tend to almost have a little bit of more similar. There's a lot of similarities to each story. There's like patterns to each one. So it's like when they were at home and stuff, the Skinwalker would, jump on the roof or bang on the walls or scratch on, just to get their attention and harass them all night to try to get them to come out. And it would chant their names, and it would mimic other people's loved ones' voices, trying to get them to come out, out of the house, or to get them to open the door and let them in. There was this one girl who was sharing her story where her parents and her grandparents went out to do something, I forgot what it was, and her and her cousins and her sister were staying home that night in the house, and they kept hearing banging and scratching and walking on the roof like it was hoof prints. It wasn't natural, like a bird was hopping on the roof. Not that a bird would be that loud, but I don't know, if it was me, I'm super loud. But, like a deer was running on the roof, or some unnatural animal that couldn't get up there. And at one point, the girl was checking on the other kids in bed that were younger, that were sleeping, to make sure that they're okay, and said, everybody stay in bed, nobody go outside, nobody open the doors, nobody look out the windows. And when she came back into the living room, her cousin, who's about a year younger than her, was just standing in front of the door and staring. And she was whispering, "Get away!" Saying the girl's name, "Get away!" "Get away from the door! Get away from the door!" Because she could see this animal figure, and it was huge, just standing outside the door, and the eyes were red, just glowing, and the girl seemed like she was in a trance and couldn't move, and she was so petrified, and she started saying her name louder and louder and started screaming her name, and the girl wouldn't move, and she ran up and grabbed her and was shaking her, and she said, quit staring at him, quit staring at him, and was dragged her away and said, quit looking at him, and she was slapping her face, trying to get her out of this trance. It was like she was just frozen, even though she was not looking at this creature / man outside the window with its glowing eyes. You know, it took her like a good 5 minutes to snap her out of it, and she came to it, and she said, what's wrong with you, what's wrong with you? And she said, I don't know. He kept telling me to open the door, you know, but the girl said, well, he wasn't speaking, but it was through her mind and stuff, but this thing kept just haunting them all night, and going around banging on the walls and the windows and the roof, and just harassing them and trying to get in and scratching the windows, and you know, she just said, don't look at him, don't look at him, and by morning, it finally left about dawn, right before the sun came up or whatever, and her parents came home, their grandparents came home. I think they were doing some kind of I don't know, spiritual thing or whatever. I'm sorry that I don't recall what the name of it went to.
No, you can't remember everything you read.
No, I can't. But what happened was, okay, so they come back and they said, don't, before they came, the parents came in, the girl told her cousin, she said, let's not tell them anything. Let's just not talk about it. Just act like it did not happen or anything. So it was at the grandmother's house. So the one kids were getting packed up, going out to the car to leave with their parents to their place, and that the great-grandmother was upstairs staring out the window, and she said that she was staring at her in such an evil way, and she had this wicked grin, as though she knew that her great-grandmother was that creature.
Wow. That
came and was harassing them. And she looked outside for tracks or any whatever, but when she was outside looking for the tracks or whatever, when she was waiting for her parents to finish packing up, that's when she noticed her great-grandmother. And her great-grandmother was giving off such an evil vibe and was grinning, you know, like the coyote grins with that, I don't want to swear, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it just got away with something. And it's like, you know, that was me, and now you know what I can do, kind of thing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what a freaky experience. You know what I mean?
Personally, it's not one I would like to have. I've had a lot of strange experiences. Another thing that I found interesting too that I read, and I also saw in this documentary, was that people who encounter these skinwalkers or wendigos or whatever, you know, that the encounter was also accompanied by a strange odor.
Really?
Really. They said every encounter, even when they even encountered it in the human form, that it was accompanied by a strange odor. Now, this came from a Navajo cop.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm wondering if maybe that would be another way to tell. If you meet one in human form, if that would be a way to tell. And, they said that the closer you get to them, the stronger the smell is.
Yeah, that's what I kind of heard too. I remember that now. I'm sorry. Well, I've been sick for like 12 days with this horrific flu and strep at the same time. So it's like a lot of the stuff that I was wanting to talk about kind of slipped out of my head. So I have a little bit of a whatever, but I do recall that too. And that's why I find fights. But another thing is when you're hearing some of these stories too, when we're talking about the Wendigo, when we're about to talk about the Wendigo and the Shapeshifter as well, it almost makes me think about Bigfoot, you know, because sometimes it almost sounds like that as well, you know.
Well, they seem to be elusive creatures. They have that in common.
Well, except for the Shapeshifter, supposedly a human who's practicing
do you think Bigfoot is a shapeshifter?
Who knows? Maybe Bigfoot is, well, Bigfoot is the next topic for next week, so I'm not going to go into that tonight, because we have a lot to talk about Bigfoot next week with our own personal experiences and some photos that I took this summer that I think should be shown on our show, because I just need some people's opinions. You saw them. It's trippy, you know.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about Bigfoot next Tuesday and stick to Skinwalkers, Wendigo, the Rougarou. Heck, we'll even talk about Penny if we want to.
That's right.
Penny's always a good topic for maybe 3 hours, a little bit. But I do find it fascinating that, that they don't even want to talk about it. And that there has to be something about it, that the fact that it's such a huge thing.
Well, the Native Americans believe so strong in this. So strong in it, and even to the point that they won't talk about it. And it's something that literally brings fear to them, a lot of them, not all now, when it's even mentioned. And if they do happen to mention it, it's usually in whispers.
Yeah, and if they do, and they feel like you're bringing it on them, that sometimes they'll go to a shaman and get blessed.
Yeah.
Just to negate that conversation. And to me, if they have that much fear about these people, it makes you wonder. There must be some truths to this. Not just because it goes back so far. And it's not just in our country. It goes throughout so many different cultures.
Right.
For so long. So that, to me, I find fascinating. I'm not saying it, for sure, everything we're saying tonight is factual, but I do find it fascinating, and that's, why we're having this conversation. I mean, we have these conversations privately all the time, and so we decided, what the hell, let's just make a show and make other people listen to us. No, not make them listen to us, but...
We're going to torture everybody, I know.
Yeah, but have them join in, because I know that there's so many other people out there on the net that have their own personal experiences, and they haven't found a good place where they feel comfortable, where they can talk about what they're going through.
Did you know now, on my friends list on Facebook...
You have friends?
Yeah, I have a couple. But some of the people on my friends list, I know for a fact, are Native American or have Native American in them, part.
Oh, yeah, like our friend...
They wouldn't even talk about it.
Yeah. We have a good one, our friend Gloomy. She's a Native American, and she posts a lot about her stuff on her Facebook and stuff. I've never really talked to her about that, because I want to, but I don't know how to come.
She was one I didn't ask because I didn't know.
Well, I did. How do you ask them? Say, I'm really interested in this, and I'm interested in that culture, and interested in getting to know more and more about it. But it's like, you don't know how to say it because you don't want to come off sounding offensive or racist.
You don't want to insult. You don't want to insult anyone.
Yeah.
You don't want to offend anyone. And what do?
Yeah.
Walk up to someone and say, "Hey, do you by some chance happen to be Native American?" You don't do that. It's just common courtesy and respect. I understand that.
Well, not that I'd ask them if they're Native American, but how do you ask them, hey, I want to get to know more about all of this?
I know, it's hard to ask them a question on a subject that is taboo to them.
Not even just Skinwalker, but everything that they believe in. I'm very fascinated in their beliefs and their spiritual, because they're so connected, and it's like you want to be a part of that as well. You want to learn and to become more spiritual too. And it's like, how do you approach someone and say, hey, blah, without coming off offensive or pissing them off or this or that? It's just, it's hard to do, I guess I'm a little bit afraid.
Nowadays it's just so hard to ask anybody anything because you either come off, it's hard to do it because you don't want to insult them, you don't want to be offensive, you don't want to offend them, and you don't want to be considered a racist.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's so hard to ask them a question on a subject that is taboo to most of them that they won't even talk about anyway.
Yeah, and it's not like you're trying to mock them or anything. It's just
no.
I'm just so, oh my gosh, fascinated with it. But the thing, I can hear my echo again, so you have to turn down your headset. But like I said, sometimes these Skinwalkers aren't completely in 100% human form. There's a part of them that they keep hidden that is still part of the animal. Like that deer lady. Her legs were deer, but the upper part of her was human. So I think nowadays, for a Skinwalker to not be picked out of the crowd just because there's so many movies and books and it's so put out there, that I would think they would kind of hide it a little bit so that they wouldn't be hunted down, so that they would probably be wearing smaller objects where it's not as noticeable.
Right. But it's like I said before, you know, before the reservations and their villages or their little towns, they used to be out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you had to go for days to even find them. But nowadays, they're intermingling with other races and other people. And it's, you know, I mean, it wouldn't do any good to walk down, say, like Main Street of Denver with a sheep pelt covering you or a wolf pelt or something. It would draw too much attention. So I don't think that if I was to meet one today, I don't really think I would even suspect that that's what they were.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, we're just kind of talking, you know, we're not saying everything we're saying is factual or, you know, whatever. But it's like I said, we found this fascinating, whatever. And it's like, I know there's some people that would talk, and there's some people that won't talk. I guess it really depends on who you are in the presence of at that moment. You know what I mean? It really depends on that person's belief, how strong they are in their faith and whatnot. But I don't think every Native American is afraid to speak about
Well, no, not all of them. We just haven't found the ones that are.
Well, technically, I haven't asked anybody. You know.
Well,
really.
I'm not going to mention any names, but I asked 3 people, and they just and they're heavily into their culture, which I thought was fantastic. But they just well, one told me that they didn't want to talk about it, and 2 of them told me, well, I don't know anything about it, when I knew they did. I could just tell by the way they were, their response. But, you know, they were trying to be polite.
Yeah. Well, how about, because we do have 2 videos that one you ran across, and one I happened to see when I was watching a show where they possibly caught a Skinwalker on film. And since this is a 2-hour show, we thought we'd give everybody like a quick intermission break to get their soda, drink water, hit the bathroom, or stretch a little bit. So we're going to play a quick song, do an intermission, and when we come back, we're going to share those 2 videos that we found with you guys and a photo and get your guys' take on it and what you think. And then we'll talk about the Wendigo and Shape-shifters and a little bit of how the Shape-shifters go way back to Jesus' time. Sound like a good idea?
Sounds like a great idea. Welcome back. We are going to show the videos now. This particular video was taken off an episode of Navajo Cops, and we're going to leave it to you as to what you're seeing.
A pair of eyes staring at them from the darkness. And through the scope of his rifle, Brian thinks he's spotted. Although the officers call off their hunt, they finally have the first solid evidence of the howler. A pair of eyes recorded by our cameras. And the howl itself, captured by our microphones.
I heard it at least 4 times, so there is something, I'll say that.
Now we do have a still from that, and if you look at it, you will see that it, to me...
It looks like there's a face with the eyes. But I don't know how good the photo is, but we will have, after the show, if you go to our show archives after the show, we will upload the videos so you guys can go back and look at both our videos as many times as you want. We just don't have it up yet, but after the show you can go to the show archives and see it. But as far as the photo, yeah.
Well, to me, the eyes are too far apart to be human. They were out there looking for something. And what I found interesting was that Navajo cops on the reservation, they not only investigate criminals and natural things, they also investigate the supernatural reportings if enough people report them. If someone calls in, and several people had called in about this howler, then they were obligated to investigate it.
Well, yeah. Well, see, what was they have you? If anybody who has Netflix, you can go and watch the entire episode on Instant Watch. It was called what? The Navajo
Cops.
Howler.
Howler,
right?
The Howler.
Was the Howler was the episode. But they were getting so many complaints of this unknown creature making sounds and noise and killing their animals and their dogs and their chickens and whatnot, that they kept getting called to all these different places, that they had created a special unit to go out and hunt this thing down, to stop whatever it is that's killing and harassing these people's animals and harassing them. So it wasn't just, I know we found a short clip it, but we didn't want to make it too long for you guys to sit and watch it all. But
yes,
so that you can.
There is a clip on this about 19 minutes long.
But you can go on to Instant Netflix and watch the total episode later on and see how much time and effort they were putting into hunting this thing down. So obviously they believe that there's something going on.
Right.
And they caught something odd. And that's what
the interesting thing about this was now these people in fatigues, they're all Navajo cops. And they had climbed up to this cave, and one looked in it, and he said that there was absolutely nothing there, but there was room enough to hide 3 people.
But you know what? It goes with what I said earlier. When they're being cornered and or tracked down, it seems like they go invisible. But what they do is they morph into a different animal and take off. So by the time they got up there, it could have changed into a snake, a scorpion, whatever, and took off, and to what they say what Skinwalkers can do,
And one of the policemen there, before he goes out on his rounds, every time, he blesses himself with a bitter herb. And he says that a lot of people want to do him harm. Criminals want to shoot them, want to beat them, run them over, and he says, and then others want to attack you with witchcraft. And this bitter herb protected him against that. He rubbed it on his face, he rubbed it on his gun, on his body. And I found that interesting too, because not only are they dealing, it's like I said before, they're not only dealing with the natural world, they're dealing with the supernatural world. And Native Americans believe that both worlds connect.
Well, I believe it too, but the point is they're raised on how to protect themselves right away from the get-go when they're out of the gate, whereas we, not we, here I go again like you are, depending on what area you're raised in, what your family's belief is, but, from the background that I grew up in, I wasn't taught anything to protect myself. I was told everything was evil, and if you even talk about it, whatever, go into hell, or, whatever. It did not help me in any aspect with my spiritual abilities and gifts, you know what I mean? Whereas they're taught to protect themselves all the time.
You can also go to Netflix, to the documentary section, and look up Navajo Cops. It apparently was a series that was on National Geographic for a while. And in episode 2, you can see the entire episode of this. And they even mentioned in there, like I said earlier, that usually an encounter with one is accompanied by a strange odor, and a couple of them mentioned, do you smell anything? Do you smell anything? Do you smell that? So it's...
but animals give off a putrid smell,
but they say this is a strange odor. It's not like any other animal you would encounter. And these people know the animals that live around them.
Well, yeah. But, and like I said, they say that skinwalkers can mimic any sound.
Yeah.
And you know, that sound could kind of sound like a similar to a coyote, but not 100%. You know, it was still a little off. But, like, you know, Kat mentioned, that kind of sounded like, it could sound like any other animal. And it's true, but skinwalkers can mimic any other animal, but they don't have the exact tonnage down of whatever animal they're trying to morph into that time. There's always some slight offness that makes you know that there's not something right about them, and that's how people kind of know they're a skinwalker. Now, with the second video, you found it on your own and showed me, and we don't know 100% if it's a skinwalker or whatever, but
this is a very quick video, and I'm going to show it, and then when I show it the second time, I'm going to try to stop on something for you to see. This one has no sound to it.
But it's something running alongside the road. And then it cuts across.
See if I can bring it back a little bit and catch it. Nope.
Well, like I said, after the show, in the show archives, we're going to upload these two videos that we showed tonight.
There it is.
Okay.
They pass something, they see this coyote, and they pass something that appears to be a man. The coyote disappears, but when they get down close to where the coyote is, there appears to be a man standing alongside of the road.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a coyote or some type of animal. I couldn't tell. I think it was a little too big for a coyote. But it was running awkward. You know, if you saw the movement of it, it was almost like galloping, like a horse. But it looked like a dog. But, and I'm not saying this is 100%.
But it didn't have that fluid motion that an animal has. I mean, this was clumsy movement.
Yeah, like I was talking about earlier, you can kind of tell if an animal is really a skinwalker is because they cannot mimic an animal's natural movements and or vocalization. But this thing, we're not saying the video is 100% real, but we found it interesting. But this thing, it follows kind of like what we heard, and then when it cuts across the road, all of a sudden, bam, it's standing up, a man wearing animal pelt.
Right.
To me, that let alone if this is real or not, that still was, to me, creepy.
Yep. Well, we're going to watch it one more time. And if you notice the movement of this animal, whatever it is, it's got kind of a clumsy movement to it.
And like we said, after the show, in our show archives, we are going to upload these two videos that we showed tonight so that you guys can watch it on your own as many times as you want and pick it apart.
No, you're right, Mush. Lovey Mush. You couldn't see it very well. It was kind of blurry, but it was taken in a car. But as Raven just said, we are going to upload them on our website, and you can look at them and maybe get a closer look. We know it's hard to see in a deal like this.
We can update in slow motion, but like I said, you guys can go back and play with it tonight after the show. But like I said, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but to me, I found that kind of fitting with what we were talking about, how the skinwalker walks, how it doesn't mimic the animal 100%, and for that, right away when it crossed the road, he stood up. I mean, that freaked me out. I mean, that was like instantaneous. And that's kind of like some of the stories I read about on the internet when these people are traveling through the Navajo reservation down there in Utah and all that whatnot in that area, and they stopped at this gas station because her kid had to pee, and the place was blocked up, so he was peeing behind the dumpster, and she said, hurry up, I smell this weird smell. I just, she had this unnerving feeling like they just had to get out of there or whatever. And when he was coming back away from the dumpster, he noticed this strange van with like animal pelt on him or whatever, and they got out of there, and she saw him jump on the back of their trailer. And he was hanging on while they were driving off, and she said, do you see, like, she didn't believe that really happened, and she asked him when he was, do you see what I see? And he said, yeah, I see that. Well, this thing had hitched a ride and was going with them to do harm with them the next time they stopped to get in and get them, I thought that was creepy.
Wizard, that is a video that we got off of YouTube.
Yeah, but like we said, we're going to have it in our show archives for you guys to watch later, so you don't have to go look it up after the show. Just click on our tab above, and both of them will be right there for you to see.
Exactly.
But you want to talk about the Wendigo and the Shapeshifter a little bit now?
Sure.
All right. Well, the Wendigo is something I'm familiar with because it's more of the Great Lakes region and up near Canada. That's more of the Chippewa, the Cree, Ojibwe, and I can't say the other name, so I'm just going to skip saying that native's name or whatever. But that's more of like, it's a malevolent. Yeah, I can't say that word.
I can't say it either.
Dark spirit, but it's one of those cannibalistic supernatural beings, and it's like very spiritually powerful, and it's more associated with up here in the coldness, and you get cabin fever, and it's up in the woods or whatever, and this thing can take on any form, and it can travel through different time and dimension to go be at wherever it wants to get its victim. You know what I mean? It's not just stuck in one place. It can just go, because it's in spirit form or whatever. And what it does is, I don't know. It kind of like possesses you, and takes over you. And these people start to change from their human form into a monstrous looking.
So this is one that not only shape shifts, it also possesses.
Oh yeah, well because it's a spirit, so it can come in any form. It's not stuck. See, when I was growing up, this is what I heard about, and it freaked me out because I'd go up north to our family property, and it's way up by the border and stuff, and we're out in the middle of no man's land. It's just great nature. I mean, it's untouched, and it's the stories that I grew up hearing about that scared the crap out of you. That made you always be careful when you went out hiking in the woods, or you didn't want to go too far off from, the house or whatever. But it takes any form that it wants, from mist to man to beast, and it despises humans, and looks to any way it can to destroy it, and it just feasts on them. And what it does is it finds somebody and it possesses them and takes them over, and these people revert to cannibalism, and they just devour whoever is in their path.
So this is, let me get this straight. Just for my own peace of mind. This is not actually a human that transforms into an animal. This is actually a spirit that can transform into anything it wants, and it can also possess people.
Oh, it does possess people, and it takes over them, and the more they devour, like they eat whatever size person or whatever they eat, they become that size, and the more they eat, the bigger and bigger it gets. It becomes a giant, and then the way that they describe this creature is disgusting. It's like the skin is pulled so tight and the bones are protruding, you know, it's basically like starved and decayed, and it smells awful, and it's just it's a freaky looking thing, you know, from what they're saying. It has, the lips are gone, and just, you know, like they were ripped off or they ate their own lips, you know, and it's like half creature, half man, and it's just, the more it devours and it eats, the bigger it becomes, and it's a freaky thing. And it's like, what it does is oh gosh, it can mimic. I'm stuck on it because so many stories about it, but it can mimic so many different sounds and people the same way that a skinwalker can, and it lures you out. And what it does is it harasses your brain. It gets into your head, and it slowly takes you over and then possesses you, and then you just starts to kill your own family, and you devour, and you become this creature, and it uses you until it moves on to its next victim. You know, where you just become this creature.
Well, Wizard is asking, so you are saying Skinwalker takes over the body and the human essence is dead? No, what she's talking about now is a Wendigo, which is actually a spirit.
Yeah, it's totally different than a Skinwalker. Skinwalker is a witch, and a Wendigo is an evil spirit that's known more up here in the northern area and in Canada. That's more of the Ojibwe. I can't even say anything tonight, right? But it's more of their beliefs, whereas the Skinwalkers, the Navajo, that's their thing. And up here we have the Wendigo, and
but basically it's just another legend of the Skinwalker. It's just a different deal. Instead of a human turning into an animal, this is a spirit that can turn into anything that it wants, take any form, and it also possesses people. It's more of a monster, actually.
Yeah, it does. But it does, I can hear myself again echoing, but it does have a monstrous form when it does show itself. It's this, like, skeleton type, disgusting half-human, half-animal that's, like, ashy gray, kind of like what a zombie would look like, all decayed and disgusting. The bones are protruded. The skin is so pulled back and tight. And it has this just jacked up smell of decay and decomposition and death and just nasty. I mean, it's just a nasty thing, you know what I mean? And this thing, it just, when you run into it, it just encompasses you and takes you over. And then you're just basically, people think you're psychotic, but the more you're feeding on other people, the more you turn into this creature, and the bigger and bigger you become.
Does it get people to do its will? Like, would it get one to kill someone?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you were, you know, skipping through the woods, because I see you as a skipper, running around with your little basket.
Oh, yeah, I just skip through the woods just to picking flowers.
Picking flowers and picking berries. That's how
right.
I see you. Wearing pink bows in your hair. But when you're skipping along, all of a sudden, yeah, whatever. And you look up, and there's this ghastly creature in front of you. It devours you and takes over you and possesses you, and then uses you to feast on the people that you have around you, that you're close to, and you're basically eating these people and down to their skeleton, and you're breaking up the bones. And I'm not trying to be graphic, but this is the stuff I heard growing up. They break up the bone and they're sucking out the marrow and stuff. But it can take on any form to take you over, you know. And I guess they used to tell the story a lot, you know, in the winter months, you know, when you get really snowed in. Up here, way up north, beyond me, it gets pretty bad, where you're just basically stuck in. There's not much to do. Well, these people get cabin fever, and it's almost like they attract this negative spirit onto them, and it possesses them, and they just go nuts, you know.
Sounds more like a demon than anything.
Well, that's what I said. It's a spirit, an evil spirit. And Richard was going to ask a question. I don't know if I missed that one. Sorry, Richard. But this is stuff I grew up hearing, you know, and they would tell this to my brothers when they were in Boy Scout camp, you know, when they're staying in this wilderness place, all away from every town and everything.
Now, I know that you have up there are Indian reservations up there, okay? Native American reservations. Is this one of their legends that has kind of filtered down through other communities?
Well, it's
Or
still,
is it...
it's a lot of, it's a bunch of us up here. The Ojibwe, the Cree, I don't know how to say this. Well, there's other ones up here. I'm sorry, I don't want to say the name to offend anybody because I know I'll butcher it. But there's a lot of different ones up here who tell that same story of the Wendigo, and it's gone back since, I don't know, since way past the 1800s, where even at one certain town up here was harassed by Wendigo for a long time, and people kept dying for a long time, and then one day it just disappeared, you know? Moved on, I guess. But it's up in Canada as well.
I wonder, though, if it is a... let's assume that it's true, okay?
Yep.
I wonder if it is something that, say, like a shaman would conjure up, or if...
well, I guess it kind of, well, here they said a little bit, kind of how, I remember one of the ways they said that it came about is when somebody reverted, because you know, if you're snowed in back in the day, you can't go out and kill anything, you didn't have grocery stores and whatnot really to go get supplies, whatnot, so much back then, that people reverted to cannibalism. And they said those who reverted to cannibalism were more at risk to become possessed by the Wendigo.
Okay.
That was one of the ways that attracted that malevolent spirit, you know. But all cultures in which the Wendigo myth appears, basically, their belief is that human beings could turn into the Wendigo if they ever resorted to, one, cannibalism, or if they became possessed by that demonic spirit of the Wendigo. And it would often come to them in dreams. And then, like, once the person was transformed...
What I was asking was, is it a natural spirit, like something that is just there, or
like a
tied
nature
to
spirit?
the land, or is it something that someone
it's kind
would
of
conjure up for revenge?
Both, if that makes sense. It's like a nature, part of a nature spirit, demonic spirit, and people can conjure it up through different ways, like I was trying to say. Like one, you know, if people resorted to cannibalism, that there puts them at risk of calling that spirit to them and becoming possessed, because the spirit loves to devour on human flesh, right? So that's one way of calling it to you. Another one they talked about to me when I didn't have a scary childhood. This is just things that you would hear randomly throughout.
Well, you said something about your brother used to hear them around the Boy Scout campfire.
Well, yeah, but let me finish this part of the sentence of what you asked me. Okay. Then I'll move on to that. But I can hear my echo again, so you might want to turn it down a little bit.
I got it down real low. I can barely hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. But they can become possessed by the demonic spirit of the Wendigo also through dreams. And they say once the person became possessed, they become violent and obsessed with eating human flesh. And like, I guess the most frequent cause of transformation into Wendigo was if a person had resorted, like I said, to cannibalism and consuming the body of another human. Really, I think that's one of their big thing that, because that's why they tell them don't, no matter how much you're hungry, when they were back in the day and they didn't have food, they say don't resort to this or you'll bring this down on our camp or whatever they called it, you know?
Right. So it just,
now my brother,
because I was thinking, to me, okay, every legend has a bit of truth to it.
Well, this is a spirit. I believe in possession.
But it's still a legend.
Yeah.
Right? And it just, for a minute there, I was thinking, well, this is something that is told around the campfire, you know, how you sit around the campfire and gee, we're outside, we're out with nature and everything, and then we start telling scary stories.
Well,
but some of the scariest ones are true stories, but...
Yeah, well, with the Boy Scout, well, I believe that people can become possessed if it turns into a creature.
I believe it too.
If they turn into a creature, that's another thing. But I don't want to go and find out if it's true or not.
Oh,
okay?
No.
It may be true, but I'm not going to go out and test it and taunt it and make fun of people and I don't know why. Sorry, I got text. It distracted me. But, what the heck? Sorry, it was a family member. The thing is I don't believe that 100% they'll turn into some wicked creature, but you know what? It's hard to say what happens, what can really happen, you know? But, like, at the Boy Scout camp, that's not, you know, these people heard this, like, you know, from Native Americans' lore being passed down or whatever,
right.
And they said it just to freak out the little boys and the older boys or whatever. And it's like, my brother told me about that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that, like, scarred me when I was little. I'm like, I'm never gonna go to camp, ever. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't either. If one of my relatives came home and said, hey, you ought to hear this great story I heard around the campfire last night. You know, that would end camping for me.
Well,
that would end being out after dark for me.
Yeah, now to share an experience, I'm not saying it is or isn't the Wendigo, but it made me think about it. Now, I was way up north, like I said, on our family land or whatever, where it's way up by the border, and there's hardly any towns there, so it's nature untouched, where you got all animals running loose, whatever. And when my friend picked me up, and we went to her grandmother's place that's just off the edge of the reservation, and this place cannot be built on. They don't want to wreck the area, so it's like a huge lakes there, and trees and everything, and they're not going to let anybody ruin it, you know? And, but we were right next to it. We're hanging out, whatever, and it was getting late, and I wanted to go back. I was staying up there by myself because it was just like a short vacation. I had 4 or 5 days off, so I went up by myself. I was probably like, I don't know, like 20, whatever. And we were coming back, and it takes about an hour or so to get back from her grandmother's place to my place. We're driving through the woods, whatever, and there's like one paved road, and it's desolate, you know, and she wanted to pull off to have us, quote unquote, smoke, which I was like, whatever. I don't do it. She did. But you know how sometimes they have that little tiny square paved that like you almost pulling into a field? You know, just that tiny little square patch of gravel, but it doesn't go anywhere. You just stop right there. So she pulled off, and we were facing off into this kind of semi-open field, and then there was trees all around us. And up in the skies, like, you can see all the universe. I mean, it's amazing up there. And sometimes you get to see the aurora borealis. So she was, you know, making her cigarette, and I was smoking my real cigarette, you know, out of my
Marlboro box. Well, I hear they're cheaper if you make them yourself.
Yeah, well, I just, back then I bought the ones from the store. I preferred them already made cigarettes, real ones. And I was smoking, I was about to light my cigarette, and I was looking out there, and I saw, you know, this fog over the ground. And I thought, oh, you know, nothing odd about that, because you see that out there sometimes, fog over the ground or whatever. I was watching that. I didn't know she was watching it at the same time. She had the vehicle turned off or whatever, and she was rolling hers, and I was smoking my real one. And I was watching, and the thing was pluming up, right? Like it was gathering itself up into a formation. And I'm sitting here watching this, and I'm like, what the A is that? You know? I'm trying not to swear. No F-bombing on our show. But this thing was pluming up, and it was gathering itself.
That's not guaranteed. Go ahead.
By you, but by me. But it was getting bigger and thicker, and I'm just like, that is not natural. And I just was about to say something. She said, do you see that? I said, yes, I do. And it was starting to come towards our truck. And it was still forming itself. And I said, you need to start the truck, and we need to get out of here. Because we are still like 40 minutes away from our place, or any, you know, in at least 35 minutes from a small town, which is like one gas station, a bar, and maybe like a church. And that thing shut down like at 6, so nobody's gonna be there anyway. And she's sitting there cranking the stinking truck, and it would not turn over. And this thing started to go faster and faster and getting thicker and bigger at our truck. And I'm like, you need to get this thing we need to get out of here now. I was freaking out, and this thing was scary. And we're in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, when I saw these lights coming down the road, and I looked, and this car, thank gosh, this car started coming. nobody ever comes down this road at this time, ever. You know, nobody would be driving anywhere at this time out in the middle of nowhere, because there's no gas stations. You break down, you're screwed. This car started coming, and right when that car started coming, her truck started up, her lights came on, she whipped it in reverse, and we just gunned it out of there. This thing was charging at us, and we got away, and as fast as it was going, I thought, oh my gosh, this thing is going to get that car. It's going to kill those people. I was so scared. And it just, oh my God, we got out of there. I don't know what happened to that thing. I don't know what happened to those people. All I saw was headlights. I didn't see a car. That was the weird part. I just seen headlights and not the object it was attached to. But it was because that thing showed up. For some reason, that's the only reason we got our car started. It was like,
have you ever been back to that little patch since?
I've drove by it to get to that lake up there, yeah. And I always think about that. But when she got me back to our farm or whatever, I made her get out of the truck and go through the whole entire place with me and make sure there was nothing in there. And then we went down, got one of the guns, and I made her help me lock all the windows, whatever, before she left. I'm surprised she left because she had to go back past that way to get home. You know what I mean?
Did you talk to her after that and ask her if there was anything there when she went by, if it was still foggy or if it was clear or anything?
You know what? I think we just didn't talk about it ever again because it was the most effed up thing. But I've drove by that during nighttime and daytime, and I've never seen anything like that ever again. This was a different kind of fog. And it gathered itself and got thicker and thicker and more solid and was forming a ginormous shape while it was coming after us. And the fact that the vehicle wouldn't even turn over and the headlights wouldn't even work. And then all of a sudden when this car comes out of nowhere, then all of a sudden we had power and this thing was charging after us and we got out of there. You know, if it's a Wendigo or not, but it kind of fit with the stories I was hearing growing up that it would take on forms like that and then come and possess you, you know? I have never experienced anything like that again up there, nor do I want to. But every time I drive past that, day or night, when I'm coming back from the lake or going towards the lake or going to cross the border or whatever, I always look that way and just say a little prayer, you know? I really don't.
I wonder if that is something like a forest spirit. If that's basically what the Wendigo is. I read somewhere where...
You mean a nature spirit? Well, it's an evil spirit.
Well, yeah, a nature spirit. I read somewhere where nature spirits are... it's like everything else. There are good ones and there are evil ones. And I'm just wondering if maybe if the Wendigo is something like that.
Well, I'm just telling you what I know what I heard. You know, I don't know 100% factual, but I do know that the Wendigo is a evil demonic spirit.
I just found that story fascinating. I really did. And I'm just wondering just exactly what kind of spirit this is.
Oh, what I saw? I don't care what I saw. I just don't want to ever see it again. You know, that's just one of things that I've experienced.
I don't even know if I would go back to that little patch, that little open patch in the daytime. I don't even know if.
But I'm not going past that. I'm not going to that little patch. I have to drive past it to get to other parts that I want to go to. If I want to go up to that huge lake to go fishing, you gotta that's the only road to get there. You know, like I said, this is wilderness. There's not too many roads. The reservation does not let you destroy their land.
Right.
They want to keep it natural.
Oh, they're very possessive about their land because they have so little of it. But
I'm not saying it is or isn't a Wendigo, but I know that it was.
But it falls in with it. What you saw falls in with it, and it could have very well have been.
Oh, for sure. But I knew it was evil as. Because we both were, the funny thing is we weren't saying anything to each other, but we were both watching this.
That was my next question. As this thing was forming, did you get this sense of fear?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yes, hell yeah, I did. This was not natural. At first, when I was looking at it, I thought that's kind of odd, But I think that's just fog. You know, I noticed it right away and thought that there was something odd to it, but just kind of, because, you know, it reminds you of that creepy movie.
Did you ever go back there, though, during the daytime and just look around? Or did you just not have the urge to do that? I know you said that you had to go by it, but did you ever go back to it?
No, I've never stopped to go run through that little patch of open field into the wilderness. No, thank you. I did not have the urge. I do not have the urge to pull over there. I do not want to even tempt it to call it to me again. I've gone past there to go up fishing, which is, 45 minutes further from that direction or whatever. I've gone up that past that point because not that far past or maybe an hour or so past that, there's a really great blueberry picking patch, but I've never experienced anything at that blueberry picking patch except for I've run into a bunch of dead fish that people would steal, because they'd break the limit in the lake and then dump it off before they got caught. That's the only thing I've ran into since there. But no, I've not had any urge to stop at that little point to investigate, to provoke.
Now, is that little point on the Indian reservation? Or
yes.
Is it near it?
Well, it's like, I would say it's theirs, but it's like right on the edge.
Right.
But you know what? It's close enough to be theirs, and who am I to say whatnot? But it's like right on the edge of it,
Well, I asked that because I just wondered if it ever came off of that and went other places. I'm sure it does. But it seems to, from what you're describing, it seems to almost live there.
Well, the Wendigo, like I said, can travel through multiple dimensions to any place it wants to reach its victim, right? So this is a demonic spirit, and I'm sure it is tied in with land and nature and whatever. But you know what? Like I said,
it also
this is
makes
stuff that goes back way back. Like I said, shape-shifting, Skinwalkers.
I know, it makes you wonder what exactly happened that created this evil spirit. Or did it just happen by itself? Did it just show up one day and say, hey, I like this area, I think I'll stay? Or did something happen that actually created it?
Well, that's the thing, and that's what piqued my interest, is like when you hear stories or you experience odd things, you want to research it. Well, I do. I like to go deep down into the rabbit hole and come out the other end to find out what's facts, what's not facts. I want to know what's what, just like what you're asking me. I can't answer that because I haven't got that far deep in, but I've gotten pretty deep in when it comes to shapeshifters, where it's kind of sucky because we're going to run out of time soon. We only have so much longer where I'm not going to be able to tell everything I wanted to talk on that part, but there's just, it goes so deep, and it's like I told you, like the spider web, almost so many different things are connected in with shapeshifting. So they talk about the reptilian people, that ties in with the NWO. There's people who talk about that stuff, and how there's political people and famous people who are really shapeshifters, and they're possessed by demonic people. I mean, there's so many things tied into all these that branch off in so many directions. I'm not saying this is factual. I'm just saying things that I've seen connected with this.
Well,
this goes way back.
The subject is one of those that the more you dig into it, the more you find out. And the next thing you know, you're into a part of it that you think, how in the world can this all be connected? But it seems to be.
And and it all comes down into, a bigger spiritual battle and war. Well, I don't know why we're screwing up on words tonight.
I don't either.
It is. But, what I was going to talk about is, a little bit before I run out of time, I wanted to tell you about this thing that I was kind of reading about on the shapeshifters and stuff. I was because I told you I was so interested in all this stuff, I was trying to find out, well, how far back does this go? Where's the end? Who started it? And, now, I'm not saying this is, I believe this. I'm not saying it's factual. I'm not, but this is something people could go and look up on the internet too and see how far they can get into it. But as far back they said that they found a new deciphered Egyptian text dating back almost 1,200 years ago, and it tells a part of the crucifixion story of Jesus, and a little bit of a plot twist there, but it's written in the Coptic language, and the ancient text tells about Pontius Pilate, the judge who authorized Jesus' crucifixion, to be crucified, that guy, having dinner with Jesus before his crucifixion, before he was crucified, and was offering his son up instead of Jesus. And it also explains in this text why Judas used a kiss specifically to betray Jesus. And what they're saying in this text is what they deciphered is they discovered in the text. They think it's because Jesus had the ability to change shape. He was like a shapeshifter. And that goes back with what I was telling you. The higher up you are with spiritual and closer to the Creator, you can change whatever, into whatever. But they're saying, I'm not saying that they're saying that what they found in this text is true events, but they're just sharing what they found. And the reason why, for Judas using a kiss in the I can't even say that Bible, but basically, well, everybody knows Judas betrays Jesus to exchange for money by using a kiss to identify him leading to Jesus' arrest, right?
Right.
And the tale explains the reason Judas used a kiss specifically is because Jesus had the ability to change shape. And the Jews said to Jesus, or Judas, sorry, how shall we arrest him? Jesus, for he does not have a single shape, but his appearance changes. And sometimes he is, ruddy, sometimes he's white, sometimes he's red, sometimes he's the color of wheat, sometimes he's, it's like he was constantly changing shape of a human to different colors and to whatever. And that's when Judas said, I'll kiss him and then you'll know who he is, because he didn't want to point out him and say, well, this is what he looks like, because then he could change shape and they wouldn't be able to arrest him. This is supposedly in this new text that they're deciphering, It doesn't mean that it's a true event, but this is what people were talking about way back then in, 185 AD. You know what I mean? They were talking about shapeshifters all the way back then,
I know, nobody really knows the origin of it, or the origin of the ability to do it. Because it makes you wonder if it goes back before Jesus.
Well, there's also that king in the Bible, I can't say his name, but that Nebuchadnezzar king. He was thought to suffer from that condition of turning into a wild beast, like a werewolf.
Yeah.
And they talk about that too. So I mean, it's kind of like so many different cultures and so many different books, and it's just talked about throughout history, even in Greek mythology. Like what about the Prince and the Frog, or Beauty and the Beast, or there's
those
just
are fairy tales.
I know, but I'm saying,
but somebody got the idea somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not saying Jesus was a shapeshifter. I wasn't saying that my belief is this, that's what it is. I'm just saying that they found these new script, things that they're deciphering, and it's talking about that. If it's a true event or not, who are we to say? But the fact that it's talked about all the way back then, to me, I find fascinating. It makes me want to dig deeper and deeper and deeper till I can find the truth.
Well, even fairy tales. Okay? It's shape-shifting. The idea had to come from somewhere. Somebody didn't just sit there and say, well, I'm going to write a story about a guy turning into a hideous beast, but he falls in love with this beautiful young princess. I mean, the idea of that had to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm not saying what I'm saying tonight is factual. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm not either. I'm not saying it's factual, but I mean, when you
discuss
it's
the stuff I ran into. Yeah,
kind of go into everything.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this happened with Jesus or this happened with that. I find it fascinating that there's stories from that far back, and it's like I'm just gonna try to keep researching until I feel satisfied with the outcome of what I discovered for myself. But like I said, everybody has to do it on their own and find out what their own truths. You know, that's kind of like what life's all about is we're traveling down this journey. You don't want to stay stagnant. We're out, you know, growing and, you know, whatever. I lost my thought. Sorry.
Well, you can't stop learning and you can't stop researching. And it doesn't matter how ridiculous you may think the subject is or the research on it is, you're still learning something. And it's up to you if you believe in it or not.
Yeah. Somebody asked the question, where did I read this from? I'll post the link again if I still have it saved somewhere into chat, and then they can go read about it themselves. But I'm not saying that I believe what they were saying. I just thought it was interesting that people were talking about it even that far back, you know. So.
Well, that's true. I didn't hear anything about new scriptures that they found or anything, but I don't. Well,
they're always finding stuff, but that doesn't mean that it's legitimate.
Right.
But you know, there's always some truths to every story. You know, there has to be something to all of this. Do people turn into wicked creatures, or do skinwalkers really turn into...
Well, so many people believe in it, and there are so many stories told about it.
And people see stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, you got to, you know, you almost have to pick it apart to find out what is legend, what is truth, and what is just made up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just... Even though it may start with a grain of truth, through the years, you know, it's going to turn into a completely different story.
Yeah, kind of like I just said tonight, you love to skip through the forest, picking berries, wearing pink bows, and carrying a basket. Now they can run with that all over Facebook and turn it into some amazing stories. And, you know, I don't know, maybe I'll photobomb.
But don't do it, because I hate pink.
Yeah, well, Hello Kitty.
But I get your point.
Yeah, but this subject alone, we could talk for hours and hours and hours on it. Like I said, there's so much other stuff I had on shape-shifting and throughout history stuff that I read on it, but we're just kind of running out of time. We only have 10 minutes left. So I guess if anybody has any questions, they could post it in chat, and maybe we can or can't answer, you know, or if you want to share something, I have no idea, unless you have something you want to talk about.
No, I just find that, actually, I find the story of the Wendigo fascinating because it's, even though it does involve shape-shifting, it doesn't involve a human. I find that really more believable than a human
Skinwalker?
That is able to transform themselves into another species completely.
Yeah, me too. Well, because the Wendigo is a demonic evil spirit that possesses a person.
Right, it's not flesh and blood.
Yeah, the person takes on a deformed shape. But, you know, people who are possessed, supposedly possessed, I hope to gosh I never run into someday or become that way. But even their features change somewhat.
That's what I hear.
So if their features change somewhat, and these people are possessed, and you know what? It kind of fits like with serial killers who become cannibalistic. You know, maybe they were possessed by the Wendigo spirit, you know, and had no idea.
Well, Wizard's got a good statement there. Wizard says, not everything that is metaphysical is physical, and not everything that is physical is metaphysical.
Yeah.
Good point. But I just find the legend, the story of the Wendigo, to me more believable, because I know that evil spirits can transform into anything they want, because it's whatever serves their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Where flesh and blood, you know, turning into a completely different species. I'm not saying it don't happen. I'm not saying I don't completely disbelieve it.
But it's just hard for you to grasp.
But I do find it hard to believe. I don't know if I can believe it or not, but I have read a lot of interesting and intriguing stories about it.
Yeah, and it's not like you're by you stating that you may not believe in it. You don't want any Skinwalker to come up to you and perform either. You know,
Well, no,
it's not
of course
going
not.
on.
Why take a chance?
But if everything's made up of energy, and we're all energy, I guess there is the possibility. There's always the possibility for something.
But we're also talking about changing molecules. I mean,
well,
you know, you're one form. Those are certain molecules. You change to another form that's completely different, not even in the same species. Well, that's a different set of molecules. And I just don't know if that is really possible or not.
That's true. But if you kind of study science and you study the atoms and all that blah blah blah.
Well, there
stuff.
are a lot of things that happen in the real world that scientists just absolutely refuse to recognize. So science isn't exact either.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But if you research, like I said, anything that you study, you know, and it's kind of good to study a multitude of things because everything, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but this is kind of my belief, everything always ends up at one same point, and that, to me, it points to there's something more to everything, and it seems to be that there is a design to all this madness. And if you don't just study one subject of science, but all the sciences, and really find out is what they're saying truthful, or is it just their, you know, theories, you know, and history and all the stuff. It all comes down to there is a design, therefore there must be some form of creator, you know. But everybody has to research these truths on their own. You don't just go off of what one person said or because it was in print or because you saw a video. You have to take this journey and discover it on your own, you know?
Right. Right. And nobody can take it for you.
Exactly.
You have to do it. You have to do it yourself. You have to do it on your own. You may ask for advice on the way. You may ask for directions along the way. But when it comes right down to it, it's just a journey you have to take on your own.
Exactly. And down, you know, as you progress further down this road, you're going to change from who you are today to a different person because you're going to learn truths. You're going to become more aware of your surroundings. You're going to shed that everyday bubble. You know what I'm saying? You're going to break the things because, you know, you're taught one thing from your family, and then you went to school, and then you were exposed to a bunch of other people. Then you started learning new things, right?
Right.
Learning different truths. Then you started changing. It's just like this. Whatever journey you step on, you know, I just think people should not be stagnant. You should want to understand, why am I here? Why was I born? What am I created for? Why does this exist? You know, research it. Don't just go off of what your preacher says, or don't go off of what your neighbor says, or don't go off what science book says, but really study all of it and research and find out what's the truth, because you're going to find it eventually. So,
well, it's what it's what you decide to believe in. It's what you decide what is fact, fiction, truth, or lie.
Yep. And that's what everybody needs to do. It's just kind of, you know, and we're not here to say believe what we believe, because we're totally open to listen to everybody.
And we totally disagree on a lot of things. Oh,
yeah. But it's like, I'm open to talk about a lot of stuff, and I'm free to have somebody talk to me, and we may have totally different beliefs, but I'm respectful enough to listen to what they have to share, because you know what? Somewhere in there is some truths that I can learn from and grow as a person, you know?
I'm a very opinionated person, and anybody in chat that knows me knows this. But I'm still open-minded enough to discuss any subject. And it doesn't matter. And a lot of times when I have talked to people about something that I just didn't believe in or didn't think was possible, you know, somewhere along the way, because I opened my mind to them, you know, they kind of turned my way of thinking around a little bit, you know, on particular subjects. But it's like I said, my mind is not so closed that I'm not at least willing to listen or willing to learn or willing to talk about it.
Yeah, we all learn from everybody, good, bad, don't matter the age. I can learn from a 3-year-old just as much as I can learn from a 190-year-old. That'd be awesome if I met somebody who's a 190-year-old. But, you know, we're all here, we're all connected, you know, and we're all on different levels of growth, you know, and nobody should be like attacking somebody else just because they're not at the same space as you are, or we think a little bit different. But ultimately, we're all heading in the same direction. Hopefully they're not sitting too long at the rest stop and wasting most of their life not changing and growing, you know, and staying in one. Because some people get stuck on drugs or drinking and stop, kind of give up in life. And hopefully if we run into those people, we can help push
we
them.
are running out of time. If anybody has any subject that they would like to hear discussed, you can get a hold of us at I'm going to screw it up, I know it. anythingbutordinary@live.com.
Or they can go to our front homepage and just type right in there and go right to our email on our contact section.
Yes.
And after our show, we're going to have those 2 videos up in our showcase, our show archives.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. And next week our subject's going to be Bigfoot.
Yep, and we're going to share personal experiences, and I have a couple odd photos for everybody to check out and let us know what they think about it. Thank you, Swiki. I had a good time talking about this with you.
I had a good time too.
Thanks,
And I hope
Rich.
I hope the rest of your week is great.